The morning sun barely broke through the thick smoke covering the French countryside when Private Danny Fletcher climbed onto his new Sherman tank. It was September 1944, and the Allied forces were pushing hard into German-occupied France after the successful D-Day invasion 3 months earlier. The war in Europe was turning, but nobody told that to the German gunners who had blown Danny's previous tank into scrap metal just 2 days ago. Danny was 22 years old with sandy brown hair and quiet green eyes that never stopped moving. He came from Montana, where his family ran a ranch near the Rockies. Back home, he spent his teenage years hunting elk and shooting trap competitions. His father taught him to track fast-moving targets before he could even drive a truck. That skill kept food on the table during the Depression. Now it might keep him alive in a war. The new crew stood by the tank watching him. They had already lost 2 Shermans and 6 good men in the past month. Nobody was excited about breaking in another replacement gunner. Sergeant Mike Corman, the tank commander, was a stocky man from Chicago with 3 years of combat experience. He crossed his arms and studied Danny with suspicious eyes. "You know how to use the 75mm gun?" Corman asked. "Yes, Sergeant," Danny replied quietly. "You better. We push toward German positions tomorrow morning. Intelligence says they got Panzer tanks waiting for us." The other crew members introduced themselves. Bobby Chun was the driver, a quick-smiling kid from San Francisco whose parents owned a restaurant. James Williams, who everyone called Hammer, was the loader. He got his nickname because he could slam shells into the gun breech faster than anyone in the battalion. Paul Rodriguez was the assistant driver and bow gunner, a former mechanic from Texas who kept the tank running when it should have died. Danny climbed into the gunner position inside the cramped tank. The metal walls were scarred and dented from previous battles. Someone had scratched names into the armor. Frenzy did not come back. He settled into the seat and immediately began adjusting the gun sights. Corman watched from the commander hatch above. His expression changed from suspicious to confused. "What the hell are you doing, Fletcher?" "Adjusting the sights, Sergeant. You're doing it backwards. That is not how we trained you." Danny kept working. "I know, Sergeant, but this is how I track targets. Started doing it hunting back home. My follows movement better this way." Corman climbed down and leaned close. "Listen carefully, Private. The United States Army spent months teaching you the proper way to aim this gun. You do not get to make up your own rules because you shot some deer in Montana. It was elk, Sergeant, and mountain lions. Sometimes grizzly bears if they came after the cattle. I do not care if you hunted dinosaurs. You use the standard method where you transfer out of my tank." The tension inside the metal box was thick enough to cut. Hammer and Bobby exchanged worried glances. They had seen this before. New guys who thought they knew better than the manual usually got someone killed. Danny finally looked up at Corman. "Sergeant, I respect the training, but when I track targets my way, I do not miss. Ever. My father taught me to lead moving targets like they're flying ducks. You calculate where they will be, not where they are. The Army method works, but it is slower. Against German tanks, slower means dead." Corman stared at him for a long moment. Outside, other tank crews were performing maintenance and loading ammunition. The sound of artillery rumbled in the distance like a permanent thunderstorm. The Germans were 7 miles away and getting reinforcements every day. September 1944 was a critical time. The Allied advance was slowing down as supply lines stretched thin. The German army was wounded, but still very dangerous. "You get one chance," Corman finally said. "Tomorrow morning we advance. If your backward setup works, fine. If it gets any of my men killed, I will personally make sure you spend the rest of this war peeling potatoes in some base kitchen." "Understood." "Yes, Sergeant." That night, Danny lay in his bedroll under the tank, listening to the distant explosions. Other soldiers played cards and wrote letters home. He thought about his family ranch, about his younger sister who cried when he left for the war, about his father who shook his hand and said nothing because there was nothing to say. The Sherman tank was not the best tank in the war. Everyone knew it. The German Panzer tanks had better armor and bigger guns. A Tiger tank could blow a Sherman apart from twice the distance a Sherman could hurt it. American tank crews survived on speed, numbers, and pure guts. They called Sherman's Ronsons after the cigarette lighter because they caught fire so easily. The official nickname was Tommy Cooker among the Germans, but Danny had a theory. The Sherman's weakness was also its strength. It was faster and more reliable than German tanks. If a gunner could hit targets at longer range than expected, the Sherman could kill before the enemy even knew they were there. His backwards tracking method might give them that edge. Just before dawn, Corman shook him awake. "Time to move, Fletcher. Get in the tank." The crew climbed into their positions. Bobby started the engine, and it roared to life with a cloud of blue smoke. Hammer loaded a high-explosive shell into the gun. Paul checked the radio and bow machine gun. Corman stood in the commander hatch with binoculars scanning the gray morning light. The radio crackled with orders. 20 Sherman tanks were advancing in a line toward German positions near a small French village. Intelligence reported enemy armor in the area. Possibly Panzer IVs. Maybe worse. Danny adjusted his sights one more time using his method. His hands were steady. His breathing was calm. This was just like hunting, he told himself. Track the target. Lead the movement. Squeeze the trigger smooth. The tank column began rolling forward through the morning fog. Somewhere ahead, German gunners were waiting. Danny was ready to prove his backward setup was not backwards at all. The fog was so thick that Bobby Chan could barely see 10 feet ahead of the Sherman. He drove slowly, following the tank in front of them through the French countryside. Inside the metal box, the crew was silent except for the rumble of the engine and the squeaking of the tracks. Danny sat at his gunner position with his eye pressed to the sight, watching the gray world slide past. IT was 0600 hours on September 15, 1944. 20 American Sherman tanks were advancing toward a German defensive line near the village of Nancy in eastern France. The Battle of Nancy was part of the larger Allied push to reach the German border before winter. General Patton's Third Army was racing against time and German resistance. Every day mattered. Every tank mattered. Corman spoke quietly into the radio, listening to updates from the column commander. The Germans had pulled back during the night, but nobody believed they had run away. More likely, they were setting up an ambush. That was the German way. Let the Americans advance, then hit them hard from prepared positions. "Gunner, stay alert," Corman said. "I got a bad feeling about this fog." Danny did not answer. He was already scanning, using his method to track the landscape. Most gunners looked straight ahead, searching for targets in their direct line of sight. Danny did it differently. He tracked side to side in smooth sweeps, watching for movement patterns, for shapes that did not belong, for shadows that were too dark or too straight. His father taught him that animals always gave themselves away by moving wrong in the environment. Tanks did the same thing. The fog began to lift as the sun climbed higher. Open fields appeared on both sides of the road. A burned-out French farmhouse stood alone like a broken tooth. The tank column was spread across a half-mile front, moving at 10 miles per hour. Then Danny saw at point 800 yards to the right front, something moved in the mist. A dark shape, low and angular. Then another shape beside it. His heart jumped, but his hands stayed steady. "Panzer tanks," he said calmly. "Right side, 800 yards. 2 contacts, maybe more behind them." Corman swung his binoculars right. For a few seconds, he saw nothing. Then the fog shifted, and there they were. 2 German Panzer IV tanks emerging from the tree line like gray ghosts. Their long guns were pointing toward the American column. "Christ," Corman breathed. "All tanks, enemy armor right side." He shouted into the radio. The German Panzer IV was a dangerous opponent. It had been fighting since 1939, and the Germans had improved it constantly. The latest version had a 75mm gun that could punch through Sherman's armor at this range. Its own armor was thick enough to stop most American shells from the front. Standard American tactics said to close the distance before engaging. Get closer, use superior numbers, flank if possible. Do not try long-range duels with German tanks. But 800 yards was too far for a safe shot according to the manual. Most gunners would wait. Danny did not wait. "Target acquired," he said. "Permission to fire, Sergeant." Corman hesitated. The Panzers had not fired yet. Maybe they had not spotted the Shermans in the fog. If Danny missed, The muzzle flash would give away their position, and the Germans would tear them apart. "Sergeant," Danny said quietly, "I have a shot. Trust me." Something in his voice made Corman decide. "Fire." Danny's hands moved in one smooth motion. His backwards tracking method had already calculated the Panzer's angle and potential movement. He was aiming at where the tank would be in the half-second it took the shell to travel 800 yards. His fingers squeezed the trigger. The 75-millimeter gun roared inside the tank. The noise was like a bomb going off in a closet. Smoke filled the cabin. The whole Sherman rocked backward from the recoil. Hammer already had the breech open and was slamming in another armor-piercing round. Through the smoke and distance, Danny watched his tracer round arc through the morning air. It looked slow, like he could walk faster. Then it struck the lead Panzer exactly where the turret met the hull. Sparks flew. The German tank jerked sideways. "Hit!" Corman shouted. "You hit the bastard!" The Panzer tried to turn, its turret swinging to find the threat. That exposed its thinner side armor. Danny was already tracking the movement. He fired again. The second shell punched through the Panzer's side skirt and penetrated the engine compartment. Black smoke poured out. A moment later, orange flames followed. "Target destroyed," Danny said calmly, already swinging his sight to the second Panzer. But the second German tank had seen enough. Its commander knew they were facing a gunner who could hit at impossible range. The Panzer's engine roared as it reversed back into the tree line, smoke grenades popping to hide its retreat. Danny tracked it but held fire. No point wasting ammunition on smoke. The radio exploded with chatter. Other tank commanders had seen a kill. At 800 yards, with 2 shots. Nobody could believe it. "Deadeye, this is column leader," the radio crackled. "Confirm that kill. Did you really hit at 800? Corman grabbed the radio. "Confirm, sir." My gunner dropped him clean. 2 shots. Inside the tank, the crew was staring at Danny. Hammer spoke first. "How the hell did you do that?" Danny shrugged. "I told you. I track them like flying ducks. You do not aim where they are. You aim where they will be when the shell arrives. Basic hunting." Bobby laughed, almost hysterical with relief. "Basic hunting? You just killed a Panzer at 800 yards like you were shooting bottles off a fence." Paul Rodriguez patted Danny's shoulder. "I take back everything I thought about your backwards setup, man. That was incredible." Even Corman was smiling. "All right, Fletcher, you earned your spot. But do not get cocky. We got a long way to go and plenty more German tanks between here and Berlin." The column continued advancing. The fog had burned off completely now, revealing rolling hills and small forests. The German defensive line was 3 miles ahead. Intelligence said the Germans had pulled back from Nancy, but were regrouping. The Wehrmacht was good at regrouping. They had been retreating and regrouping since June, but they were still fighting hard. Danny kept his eye on the sight, scanning constantly. The adrenaline was wearing off, and his hands were starting to shake a little. He had just killed men. The Panzer crew probably burned to death in their tank. He thought about that, then pushed it away. This was war. They would have killed him without hesitation an hour later. The column stopped near a destroyed village to refuel and rearm. Crews climbed out to stretch and eat cold rations. Other gunners came over to look at Danny's sight setup. They asked questions. How did he track targets? What was different about his method? Could he teach them? Danny tried to explain, but it was hard to put into words. It was instinct developed over years of hunting. You had to feel the target's movement, predict its path, become part of the shot. The Army taught mechanical steps. Danny taught feel. Corman pulled him aside. "Colonel wants to see you tonight. Word got up the chain about that kill. They are interested in your technique. I just want to do my job, Sergeant." "I know, but 800-yard kills? That changes things. Shermans are not supposed to be sniper tanks. You might have just invented something new." That afternoon, the column pushed forward again. Danny destroyed a German half-track at 700 yards and damaged a self-propelled gun at 900. Each shot was calculated using his backwards tracking. Each shot HIT'd as the sun set. Corman looked at Danny with new respect. "You know what, Fletcher? I think your backwards setup might just win us this war." Danny did not answer. He was too busy watching the tree line ahead, where something large and dark was moving in the shadows. Something much bigger than a Panzer IV.IT, it might be a Tiger tank. And Tigers did not run away. The ruins of the French village smelled like burned wood and death. 3 days had passed since Danny's first kill, and the Allied advance had slowed to a crawl. The Germans were fighting for every mile now. September 1944 was becoming a hard month. The easy victories after D-Day were over. The Wehrmacht had its back against Germany itself, and desperate men fought differently than retreating men. Danny Sherman sat in a defensive position behind a collapsed stone wall. The crew had been there since dawn, watching the tree lean 1,200 yards away. That was beyond normal engagement range. Most tank commanders would ignore it. But Danny had been staring at those trees for 2 hours, and something was wrong. "You sure you saw something?" Corpsman asked again. "I'm sure, Sergeant. Something big moved in there. Too heavy for a Panzer IV. Wrong engine sound." Bobby Chon was eating cold beans from a can. "Maybe it was a truck." "No," Danny said quietly. "Trucks do not idle like that. This was a big cat. A real big cat." Everyone in the tank knew what he meant. A Tiger I tank. 56 tons of German engineering designed to kill everything it saw. The Tiger had an 88mm gun that could destroy a Sherman from a mile away. Its front armor was so thick that American shells bounced off like pebbles. Tank crews had nightmares about Tigers. The official designation was Panzerkampfwagen 6 Tiger Osf. But everyone just called it the Tiger. Germany had started using them in 1942, and they had dominated every battlefield since. One Tiger could hold off a dozen Shermans, if positioned correctly. American doctrine said to avoid Tigers when possible and call for air support. Never duel a Tiger one-on-one. That was suicide, but sometimes you could not avoid them. "If it is a Tiger, we should pull back," Paul Rodriguez said nervously. "Call in artillery or something." Corpsman looked through his binoculars again. The tree lean was silent now. Maybe Danny was wrong. Maybe it was nothing. But the kid had been right about everything so far. His backwards tracking method had destroyed 4 German vehicles in 3 days. Other crews were copying his technique. The battalion commander had visited yesterday to watch Danny work. "Contact," Danny said suddenly. 1,200 yards. Tiger tank emerging from tree lean. Turret facing left. Has not seen us yet. Corpsman swung his binoculars and felt his stomach drop. There it was. A massive Tiger, moving slowly out of the forest shadows. Its gun was pointing away from them, searching for targets in another direction. The Tiger had probably been hiding in the woods for hours, waiting for American tanks to come closer. "All units, Tiger tank, Sector 3, Corpsman radioed quietly. Do not fire. Repeat, do not fire. Wait for orders." Other tank commanders responded with acknowledgement. Everyone was scared. Tigers were bad news. This one looked fresh, with full camouflage paint and no battle damage. That meant an experienced crew. The Tiger stopped at the forest edge, its commander probably scanning with binoculars. It was looking for targets at normal range, maybe 400 or 500 yards. It had not spotted the American tanks hiding in the village ruins at 1,200 yards. The morning sun was behind the Americans, making them harder to see. The Germans had made a mistake with their positioning. "Sergeant," Danny said quietly, "I can hit it at 1,200 yards. Are you insane? The Tiger has not seen us. It has stopped. If I hit the rear lower plate when it turns, I can disable the engine. Then we can flank it." Corpsman knew the manual answer. "Pull back. Call for support. Do not engage." But air support was busy elsewhere. Artillery was low on ammunition. If they pulled back, the Tiger would reposition and ambush someone else. More Americans would die. "Hammer, load armor-piercing." Corpsman ordered to Hammer's hand was shaking, but he worked fast. The armor-piercing round slammed into the breech. Danny tracked the Tiger through his sight, using his backwards method to calculate angle, distance, and the tank's probable movement. His father's voice echoed in his memory. "Lead the target. Feel where we'll be. Become part of the shot." The Tiger's turret began to traverse, searching. That meant it would turn the hull soon to get a better position. Danny waited. His hands were steady. Inside the cramped tank, the other 4 men held their breath. The Tiger started to turn. "Firing," Danny said calmly. The 75-millimeter gun roared. The shell arced across 1,200 yards in what felt like slow motion. Danny was already tracking the impact point, his backwards method showing him exactly where the shell would land. The armor-piercing round struck the Tiger's rear lower plate exactly where Danny had aimed. Sparks flew. The Tiger lurched forward as the engine compartment took damage. Black smoke poured from the rear deck. The massive tank was immobilized. "Hit!" Corman shouted. "You hit it! Reload, reload!" But the Tiger was not dead. Its turret swung toward them, the long 88mm gun searching for revenge. Even immobilized, the Tiger was deadly. That gun could vaporize their Sherman in one shot. "Bobby, back up!" Corman yelled. "Get us behind that wall." Bobby threw the transmission into reverse. The Sherman jerked backward just as the Tiger fired. The 88mm shell screamed past them and exploded against a building 50 yards behind, destroying the entire structure in a ball of fire. "Holy Christ," Paul breathed. Danny was already tracking the Tiger again. It was turning its turret, trying to find them behind the wall. He had maybe 10 seconds before it fired again. The Tiger's weak spot was the turret ring, where the turret connected to the hull. If he could hit that, the turret would jam. The tank would be helpless, but it was a tiny target at 1,200 yards. Impossible by any standard. Danny stopped thinking about impossible. He thought about elk running at full speed across Montana snow. He thought about clay pigeons launched into the wind. He thought about his father saying, "Trust your instincts, son. Your eyes know before your brain does." The Tiger's turret locked onto their position. Danny fired. The shell hit the Tiger's turret ring dead center. Metal screeched. The German turret froze, unable to traverse. The Tiger was now a 46-ton metal coffin with no engine and no working turret. Smoke grenades popped around the Tiger as its crew bailed out, running for the tree lane. They knew when they were beaten. The Americans did not shoot the running men. There was no point. The war was not about killing soldiers. It was about destroying machines. For a moment, there was silence. Then the radio exploded with voices. Every tank commander in the battalion had seen it. A Sherman had just disabled a Tiger tank at 1,200 yards with 2 shots. It was impossible, but they all watched it happen. "Deadeye, this is battalion commander," the radio crackled. "Did you just kill a Tiger at 1,200 yards? Corman grinned and grabbed the radio. "Affirmative, sir. My gunner put 2 rounds exactly where they needed to go. Tiger is neutralized." Inside the tank, the crew was laughing with relief and disbelief. Hammer hugged Danny from behind. Bobby was shouting something in Chinese. Paul kept saying, "That was crazy, man. That was absolutely crazy." Danny just sat quietly at his sight, scanning for more targets. His hands were steady. His breathing was normal. For him, it was just another shot, just like hunting. That evening, as the crew performed maintenance on the Sherman, other tank crews came by to see the gunner who killed the Tiger at impossible range. Someone had already painted a white tiger stripe on their gun barrel. The nickname was spreading through the division. They were not just Sergeant Corman's crew anymore. They were the Deadeye crew, and their gunner was becoming a legend. But legends attracted attention. German attention. And the Wehrmacht did not like legends that kill their tanks. October 1944 brought cold rain and harder fighting. The Allied advance had reached the German border, and every foot of ground cost blood. Danny's Sherman tank now had 9 white kill marks painted on its barrel. Someone had also painted WWII in big letters on both sides of the turret. The nickname had become official. 3 weeks had passed since the Tiger kill, and Danny's reputation had spread throughout the Third Army. Other gunners tried to copy his backwards tracking method with mixed results. Some had the instinct for it. Most did not. It was not something you could teach from a manual. It came from somewhere deeper, from years of reading landscapes and predicting movement. The crew had become like brothers. Corman trusted Danny completely now and gave him freedom to engage targets at his discretion. Hammer could load shells so fast that Danny barely had a wait between shots. Bobby Chan could position the Sherman perfectly for the best angles. Paul Rodriguez had become an expert at spotting targets early and calling out ranges. They had fought through France together, crossed into Germany together, and survived when dozens of other tank crews had not. The odds were still terrible. Sherman tanks were still catching fire when hit. Good men were still dying every day. But the Deadeye crew had something special. They had a gunner who turned their Sherman into a sniper rifle. Battalion command had started using them differently than other tanks. While most Shermans advanced in formation, the Deadeye would take overwatch positions at long range. Danny would provide covering fire while other tanks moved forward. It was an unconventional tactic born from unconventional skill. It saved lives. On October 12th, the division was ordered to assault German positions near the Siegfried Line. This was Hitler's defensive barrier along Germany's western border. Concrete bunkers, tank traps, minefields, and prepared fighting positions stretched for miles. The Germans called it the West Wall. Allied soldiers called it hell. The assault began at dawn with artillery bombardment. Hundreds of American guns pounded German positions for an hour. Then the tanks rolled forward through the smoke and mud. Danny Sherman was positioned on a hill 800 yards behind the main advance, providing overwatch. Through his sight, Danny watched the battlefield unfold like a deadly chess game. German anti-tank guns opened fire from hidden bunkers. 2 Shermans exploded in balls of fire. Another was hit and started burning, its crew bailing out through the hatches. "Target bunker position, 700 yards, Danny called out. "I see the gun flash." "Take it," Corman replied. Danny tracked the bunker entrance using his method. The German anti-tank gun was a PaK-40, a 75mm weapon that could kill a Sherman easily. It was hidden in a concrete bunker with just the gun barrel sticking out. A difficult shot, but Danny was not aiming at the gun. He was aiming at the bunker entrance. Waiting for the crew to reload, he fired. The high explosive shell went through the bunker, opening like a thrown rock through a window. The bunker exploded from inside. The German gun crew killed instantly. One threat eliminated. "New target, Panzer tank, 900 yards, moving right to left," Danny said calmly. He was already tracking. German Panzer IV was trying to flank the American advance. It was moving fast, using terrain for cover. Most gunners would need multiple shots to hit a moving target at that range. Danny fired once. The Panzer exploded, its ammunition cooking off in a fountain of fire. The battle continued for 3 hours. Danny methodically destroyed target after target. Another Panzer IV, a Stu-G assault gun, a half-track full of German infantry, 2 more anti-tank positions. His backwards tracking method was working perfectly. He was hitting targets that other gunners could barely see. By noon, the German position was collapsing. American infantry was pushing through the fortifications. The Siegfried Line was broken at this point. The advance would continue tomorrow. Back at the rally point, a jeep pulled up with a man in clean uniform. He was a reporter from Stars and Stripes, the Army newspaper. He had a camera and a notepad. "Private Fletcher," the reporter asked, "I am here to do a story about you. The gunner who turns Shermans into sniper tanks." Danny did not like the attention. "I just do my job, sir." "Your job is destroying German tanks at impossible ranges. The whole army is talking about you. I watched you today. 9 kills in 3 hours. That is extraordinary." The reporter took photographs and asked questions. He wanted to know about Montana, about hunting, about Danny's backwards method. The crew stood nearby, proud, but also protective. They did not want the gunner turned into some propaganda poster. That evening, the battalion commander visited personally. He was a colonel with gray hair and tired eyes who had been fighting since North Africa in 1942. "Private Fletcher, I am recommending you for promotion, Sergeant. I am also offering you a position as a gunnery instructor at the training base in England. You could teach your method to hundreds of new tank crews. Save thousands of lives." Danny thought about it. Teaching was important, but he looked at his crew. Corman, Hammer, Bobby, Paul. These were his brothers. They had kept him alive, and he had kept them alive. "You did not abandon your brothers." "Thank you, sir, but I respectfully decline. I want to stay with my crew." The colonel nodded slowly. "I understand. But Private, you should know that your technique is being studied. We are documenting it, teaching it where we can. You have changed how we fight tank battles. That is a rare thing." After the colonel left, Corman sat down next to Danny. "You could have taken that instructor job. Safe position. War would be over before you had to come back. War is not about being safe, Sergeant. It is about finishing the job with the people you trust. Corman smiled. You're all right, Fletcher. Crazy as hell, but all right. Intelligence reports came in that night. The Germans were planning a major counterattack. They were pulling back divisions from other sectors, gathering tanks and troops for one big push. The Wehrmacht was wounded and desperate, but still dangerous. Hitler had ordered his armies to hold every inch of German soil. That meant brutal fighting was coming. November arrived with snow and freezing temperatures. The division pushed deeper into Germany, but progress was slow. The Germans were fighting harder now, defending their homeland. Every village was a fortress. Every forest hid ambushes that Danny's kill count reached 14. The Deadeye crew had survived more battles than most tanks survived ours. Other crews looked at them with a mixture of respect and superstition. Some thought they were blessed. Some thought they were just lucky. Danny knew they were just good at their jobs. On November 20th, the orders came. The division was being repositioned to Belgium. Intelligence had detected massive German troop movements. Something big was coming. The Battle of the Bulge was about to begin, though nobody knew it. As the Sherman column moved through the cold November rain, Corman looked at Danny. You think your backward setup will work in snow and ice? Danny checked his sights one more time. Only one way to find out, Sergeant. The crew laughed, but there was tension underneath. Everyone could feel it. The war was building towards something terrible. The Germans were planning something, and the Deadeye crew would be right in the middle of it. In the distance, thunder rumbled. Or maybe it was artillery. In this war, it was hard to tell the difference. Danny kept his eye on the sight, scanning the landscape, using his backwards tracking method to search for threats. Whatever was coming, they would be ready. The Deadeye crew always was. December 16th, 1944. The Belgian forest was silent except for falling snow. Danny Sherman sat in a defensive position near a crossroads with 3 other American tanks. The temperature was below freezing and ice covered everything. The crew had been there for 2 days, guarding the road while the rest of the division repositioned. It was supposed to be a quiet sector. The Germans were finished, everyone said. The war would be over by Christmas. Everyone was wrong. T-0530 hours. The forest exploded with artillery fire. Thousands of German guns opened up along an 80-mile front. Trees shattered into splinters. The ground shook like an earthquake. This was Operation Watch on the Rhine, Hitler's last desperate gamble. The Germans were attacking with 3 entire armies, over 200,000 men and hundreds of tanks. They were trying to split the Allied forces and reach the port of Antwerp. If they succeeded, the war could last another year. History would call it the Battle of the Bulge. The men fighting in it just called it hell. All units, this is battalion. The radio screamed through static. Massive German attack across entire sector. Multiple armored columns approaching your position. Hold at crossroads at all costs. Corman looked through his vision slit at the forest. Dark shapes were moving through the snow and trees. Lots of them. Count off all tanks. 3 other Sherman commanders responded. For tanks total, they were supposed to stop a German armored column. The math was bad. Bobby, position us behind that building rubble, Corman ordered. Danny, you are about to have a busy morning. Bobby backed the Sherman into a hold-down position where only the turret was exposed. It was the best defensive stance for a tank. The other 3 Shermans spread out across the crossroads, creating a firing line. The first German tank appeared through the snow at 800 yards. It was a Panther, one of Germany's best tanks. Bigger than a Panzer IV, almost as dangerous as a Tiger. Its sloped armor could bounce American shells easily. Behind it came another Panther, then another, then infantry in white winter camouflage. Contact multiple Panthers, 800 yards, Danny called out calmly. Engaging lead target. His backwards tracking method calculated angle, speed, and distance in an instant. The lead Panther was moving slowly, cautiously advancing. Danny waited for it to cross an invisible line in his mind. The perfect shot window. Then he fired. The armor-piercing shell hit the Panther's lower front plate, the weakest spot on its armor. The German tank stopped, smoke pouring from its engine. Not destroyed, but immobilized and blocking the narrow road. Target hit, second target acquiring, Danny said. Hammer was already slamming another shell into the breach. Paul Rodriguez was feeding him ammunition as fast as humanly possible. Bobby had the engine ready to move if they needed to reposition. Every man knew his job perfectly. The second Panther tried to go around the first. Danny tracked it through his sight, leading its movement with his method. He fired. Hit. The Panther's track exploded, immobilizing it beside the first. Two disabled Panthers now blocked the road completely. The German attack at this point was stalled, but the Germans were not stupid. Infantry with Panzerfaust anti-tank rockets were spreading out to flank. More tanks were coming through the forest from different directions. The radio was chaos. American positions all along the line were being overrun. This was not a local attack. This was a massive offensive. Tiger tank, left flank, 900 yards. Paul shouted. Danny swung the turret left. Through the snow, he saw the unmistakable shape of a tiger eye. Then he saw another one behind it. Two tigers, plus at least 5 more Panthers in the forest, against 4 Shermans with limited ammunition and no reinforcements coming. Corpsman to all tanks, the sergeant said into the radio, his voice steady despite the situation. We hold this road, or they break through to the supply depots. Focus fire on my command. Deadeye will take the left tiger. Tank 2, engage the right tiger. Tanks 3 and 4, suppress the Panthers. It was a suicide mission, and everyone knew it. But orders were orders. The crossroads had to be held. Danny tracked the tiger through the snow. It was advancing carefully, its 88mm gun searching for targets. He used his backwards method to calculate the shot. At 900 yards, in snow, with the tiger partially concealed by trees, this was nearly impossible. But Danny had done impossible before that he fired. The shell hit the tiger's gun mantlet, not penetrating but damaging the gun elevation mechanism. The tiger could still fire, but could not aim properly. It was like shooting out someone's eye. Hit, target damaged. Danny called. The tiger fired back. The 88mm shell screamed over the Sherman and exploded behind them. If Bobby had not positioned them perfectly, they would be dead. Second round, same target. Corpsman shouted. Hammer loaded. Danny tracked. The tiger was trying to reposition for a better shot. Danny waited for it to turn, exposing its thinner side armor. 3 seconds. 2 seconds. Now that he fired, the shell penetrated the tiger's side armor at the turret base. The German tank shuddered and stopped moving. Smoke poured from every hatch. The crew did not bail out. They were dead before they could. The second tiger fired at Tank 2, hitting it square in the front. The American Sherman exploded, its ammunition cooking off. 5 men died in an instant. Danny felt sick but kept working. Grieve later. Fight now. Engaging second tiger, he said, but the second tiger was smart. It had seen what happened to its partner and was staying hull down behind a ridge, only its turret exposed. A difficult shot. Danny tracked it anyway. He was not thinking anymore. He was pure instinct, pure skill, pure backwards tracking method. His father's voice in his head. His years hunting in Montana. His 3 months of combat. All of it came together. He fired 3 times in 30 seconds. The first shot missed. The second hit the tiger's turret armor, but bounced off. The third shot hit the tiger's gun barrel, bending it useless. The tiger reversed back into the forest, unable to fight with a destroyed gun. German infantry was everywhere now. Panzerfaust fired at the remaining Shermans. Tank 3 was hit and started burning. Tank 4 was backing up, firing its machine guns at the infantry. Danny Sherman was alone at the crossroads now. All tanks, fall back to secondary positions, the battalion commander ordered over the radio. We cannot hold the primary line. But falling back meant abandoning the crossroads. That meant German tanks would break through and hit the supply depots. Thousands of American soldiers would be cut off and surrounded. Sergeant, Danny said quietly, if we fall back now, a lot of people die. Corpsman was quiet for a moment. Then he made his decision. Battalion, this is Deadeye. We are staying. We will hold as long as possible. Deadeye, you will be overrun. Fall back. That is an order. Sorry, sir. Radio must be damaged. Cannot hear you clearly. Corman switched off the radio and looked at his crew. Anyone want to leave? Nobody moved. They were staying together. One Sherman against a German armored column. The math was terrible, but sometimes math did not matter. Sometimes you just had to hold the line. For the next hour, Danny destroyed everything that moved. Panthers, half-tracks, trucks. Anything trying to use the crossroads died. His backwards tracking method worked even in the chaos and snow. Hammer loaded until his arms were numb. Paul fed ammunition until they were almost out. Bobby kept the engine running and the tank positioned perfectly. Then American reinforcements arrived. 20 Shermans and a company of infantry. They had heard Deadeye was making a stand and came to help. Together, they stopped the German advance at that point. The crossroads was held. When the battle ended that evening, Danny's Sherman had 16 kill marks on its barrel. The crew had fired every shell they had. The barrel was so hot it glowed red. They had survived what should have killed them 10 times over. A captain climbed onto the Sherman and looked at the crew. You boys just saved about 5,000 American lives. You know that. Corman was too tired to answer. Danny just nodded. Hammer and Paul were sitting in the snow, too exhausted to move. Bobby was checking the engine with shaking hands. The Battle of the Bulge continued for weeks, but the German offensive eventually failed. The Allies pushed them back. The war in Europe would end in May 1945 with Germany's surrender. Danny's backwards tracking method was officially documented and taught to new tank crews. It became part of the gunnery manual, though most gunners never mastered it the way Danny did. You could not teach instinct. You could only teach technique. The Sherman tank Deadeye survived the war and was eventually placed in a museum. 17 kill marks on the barrel, more than most tanks ever achieved. The crew all survived too, which was rarer than the kill count. After the war, Danny went back to Montana. He bought land next to his family ranch and raised cattle. He stayed in contact with his crew. Every year they met for a reunion. Corman, Hammer, Bobby, Paul, brothers forever. One spring day in 1952, Danny was teaching his 6-year-old son to shoot trap. The boy missed the first few targets, then asked, "Dad, why do you aim that way?" "Teacher says you do it backwards." Danny smiled and adjusted his son's stance. "Sometimes the best way forward is to think backwards, son. You do not aim where the target is. You aim where it will be. That is how you never miss." The boy tried it. The clay pigeon launched into the blue Montana sky. The boy tracked it using his father's method. He fired. The target shattered. "I hit it," the boy shouted. "You sure did," Danny said quietly. "Just like hunting, just like war. You lead the target and trust your instincts." He looked at the mountains in the distance, remembering snow and fire and the sound of the 75mm gun. Remembering his brothers in that Sherman tank. Remembering the crossroads in Belgium where they decided math did not matter as much as courage. The war was over. The hunting was done, but the lessons remained. Sometimes you had to do things backwards to move forward. Sometimes impossible was just another word for difficult. And sometimes a kid from Montana with a backward setup could change the way an entire army fought. Danny picked up another clay pigeon. "Ready for another one, son?" The boy nodded eagerly. The target flew. The gun fired. The pigeon shattered. Some things never changed.